My fiancée laughed. I'm not moving to some boring small town. A week later, I moved there alone. And when she found out I make $600,000, she came begging to get me back. I think the moment everything shifted for me wasn't the argument itself, not even the final breakup. It was the way Rebecca said the word boring, like it was some kind of insult, like it meant beneath her. Like anything that didn't sparkle the way our overpriced downtown life did was automatically worthless. I remember standing in our apartment kitchen that night, the tall windows glowing with city lights behind her, while she paced back and forth in that robe she wore on nights she felt dramatic, hair tied up, nails tapping the counter, telling me how she would never survive in a town where the fanciest restaurant was a steakhouse and the stores closed at 8 p.m. She didn't even ask what the offer was, didn't ask what the role meant, didn't ask what the salary was, didn't ask what it could do for our life, our home, our future kids. Everything she said she wanted. She just wrote it off like I'd suggested we move to Mars. I had walked in excited, holding a folder full of documents, charts, projections, salary breakdowns, cost of living comparisons, schools, parks, food spots. I knew how she worked. If she saw the numbers, she'd understand. But she didn't look at the papers. She didn't look at me either. She just kept saying, I'm not moving to a boring town, Brian. I'm not giving up my life for your job. She said it with this dismissive finality, like the conversation was an inconvenience, something she'd already decided wasn't worth emotional investment. When she walked away that night, I sat at the table for a long time, staring at the offer letter. Division head. A role I wouldn't normally get before 40. A salary that honestly scared me when I first saw it. A chance to build something from scratch. But all I could hear in my head was her voice. Not angry, not sad, just uninterested. That indifference stung me more than any fight we'd ever had. Because when someone truly wants a future with you, they at least talk about it. They don't shut the door without even asking what's behind it. The next morning at breakfast, she was cheerful again, scrolling through her phone, showing me some trendy new rooftop bar she wanted to try. I watched her talk about drinks and tapas, like last night didn't happen. Like the moment I told her about something huge in my life, she'd turned into someone I didn't recognize. She never brought the job up. Not once. Not even, did you decide? It was like she'd erased the entire conversation so she didn't have to deal with the possibility that life might ask her for compromise. I should have seen it then. The truth wasn't that she hated small towns. The truth was that she loved this version of life more than she loved the idea of us being a team. And deep down, part of me already knew she wasn't going to choose me. She was going to choose her comfort, her skyline, her designer clients, her curated Instagram aesthetic. And I, stupidly, had been planning a wedding with someone who would never walk toward anything that didn't fit her brand. Over the next 2 weeks, every time I brought up something small, like budgeting or maybe saving up for a house, she'd wrinkle her nose and say, "Why? We're fine here." We weren't fine. She was fine. I was suffocating. My job was demanding, competitive, exhausting, and here was a chance to step into leadership, to build an entire division, to prove myself after years of grinding. But she didn't want me to grow if my growth required her to adjust. I tried. I really did. One night, I showed her photos of Millbrook, the lake, the historic district, the little cafes, the hiking trails, and she barely glanced at them before saying, "Ugh, that is so Hallmark movie." Then she told me I was ruining the vibe of the evening and asked if we could watch a design show instead. That was the first time I caught myself looking at her and thinking, she doesn't see me. Not the real me, not the man with ambition, not the man who wants more than this apartment and these parties and these rooftop bars. She saw the version of me that fit her lifestyle. The man who made six figures, wore tailored shirts, took her to nice restaurants, held her purse during shopping trips, and clapped politely at art shows she dragged me to. She didn't want the man who dreamed beyond city limits. One night at dinner with her friends, the infamous dinner, the one that sealed it for me, they all laughed at the idea of living anywhere smaller than 500,000 people. One of them actually gagged when I mentioned farmers' markets. Another joked that small towns were for people who gave up. Then Jessica, the friend who'd never liked me, leaned over and said, "Honestly, Brian, you expecting Rebecca to follow you is like old school. It's giving patriarchy." But when I asked, "So, it's patriarchal to move for a man, but not selfish to expect him to turn down a massive opportunity for you?" they just stared at me like I'd broken some unspoken social rule. Rebecca didn't defend me, didn't say, "Hey, let's be fair." She just smiled sympathetically like she agreed with them. I drove home that night, knowing with painful clarity, if I turned this job down, I'd resent her forever, and she'd still never appreciate the sacrifice. If I took the job, she'd leave me, because she wasn't willing to bend even a little. Compromise wasn't in her vocabulary unless it benefited her. So when she said those final words, the ones she probably thought I would forget, "I'm not moving to that boring town for your job. Not now, not ever." Something in me closed, quietly, completely. I heard myself say, "I understand." And she smiled, assuming it meant surrender. But really, it meant acceptance. Acceptance that we were never going to be the partners I thought we were. That I was engaged to someone who loved the idea of me more than the reality of my dreams. That she wasn't going to choose me in the long run. So, I chose myself. For once, I accepted the position the next morning, told my boss yes, signed the paperwork, set the relocation date. And for 2 weeks, I watched Rebecca move through life as if nothing was changing, while I slowly packed pieces of a future she'd never even tried to understand. The strange part? I didn't feel guilty. I felt relieved, because when someone refuses to see your value, the best thing you can do is walk toward a life that will. The night before I told her, I sat alone in our living room, the same room where we danced after getting engaged, the same room where she'd cried telling me she loved me more than anything, and realized none of that history mattered if she wasn't willing to walk into the future with me. And the truth was simple, harsh, impossible to unsee. She didn't love me. She loved the life I gave her, the convenience, the ease, the image. And once I understood that, moving on didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like freedom. Rebecca found out 2 weeks before my move date, on a Sunday morning so deceptively peaceful, it almost felt staged. Sunlight came through the balcony glass. She was barefoot in an oversized sweater, making coffee like we were a couple untouched by anything difficult. When I said, "We need to talk," she didn't even turn around at first. She just muttered, "If this is about that small town thing again, I told you we're not doing that." I let the silence stretch long enough that she finally turned, mug in hand, brows pulled together. And then I said it. Not soft, not cruel, just factual. I accepted the job. I'm moving to Millbrook in 2 weeks. The mug slipped from her fingers, hit the counter, splashed hot coffee everywhere, but she didn't even flinch at the heat. She just stared at me like I'd become someone entirely new. "Very funny," she said, waiting for a smile that didn't come. When she realized I wasn't joking, her face drained of color. You can't be serious. We're engaged." "Exactly," I said. "And you made it clear that your life here is more important than our future together." "That's not what I said," she snapped. "You said you wouldn't move for my job. You said it wasn't up for discussion." "Because it isn't," she shouted. I'm not starting over in some dying town just because you want to play boss. Division head isn't playing boss, I said. It's running an entire engineering division. It's career defining. She waved her hand like she was swatting away an insect. I don't care if they made you CEO. I'm not moving. I know, I said. That's why I'm going alone. She stood there shaking, hair framing her face in messy waves, breathing like she'd been punched. If you leave, she whispered, we're done. I know, I repeated quietly. She stared at me like she was waiting for me to crack, to say something reassuring, to beg. When she realized I wasn't changing my mind, she whispered the question she should have asked months ago. You're really throwing away 5 years for money? I almost laughed. She didn't know. She had no idea. I almost told her about the $600,000 package then, but the truth hit me like cold water. If she had asked, if she had listened, if she had even cared enough to say, tell me more, she would have known already. But she didn't ask. Not once. She didn't want information. She wanted control. It's not about money, I said. It's about respect, and you haven't shown me any. She didn't cry then. She didn't scream. She just turned away and walked into the bedroom, quietly closing the door like something fragile had shattered inside her. But it wasn't heartbreak. Not yet. That would come later, when she realized what she'd actually lost. The next 2 weeks were war. She cycled through anger, bargaining, denial, guilt-tripping, back to anger, then sudden sweetness that lasted 2 hours before turning into more rage. She threw my clothes out of our closet, posted screenshots of quotes about men who abandon their families, even though we had no family, except the one I'd been hoping to start someday, sent long essays about how I was choosing greed over love. One day she sobbed into my shirt, saying she would visit every weekend. The next day she screamed that I was a disgrace for choosing a town with no nightlife. One night she packed a suitcase dramatically, only to unpack it again while accusing me of ruining her future. Her friends added fuel, texting her things like, he's choosing capitalism over commitment, and he's showing his true colors. She showed me those messages like they were evidence in a courtroom. She wanted me to feel cornered, but all they did was confirm I was making the right decision. Moving day came. She wasn't home. She'd gone to her friend Natalie's place, blocked me on everything except email, probably so she wouldn't have to watch me leave. The movers packed what was mine. Not much, honestly. It was startling to realize how little I actually owned in the apartment I paid for. The silence in that space felt heavier than I expected. Like the ghost of a life I thought I wanted was still lingering, watching me carry boxes out the door. The drive to Millbrook was long and quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like a reset button being pressed. When I crossed the city limits, something unknotted in my chest. The town wasn't what she mocked it for being. It had charm. It had space. It had potential. And for the first time in a long time, I saw a future that belonged to me, not just to us. My first months there felt surreal, like waking up in a life I'd been craving without knowing it. My team respected me. My work mattered. Every day felt like I was building something instead of maintaining something fragile. And then the money hit. The first bonus alone was larger than what I had expected, and when my total compensation passed $500,000, I didn't celebrate. I just sat in my new kitchen staring at the number, thinking about how Rebecca didn't ask even once. Not one question. She'd said money wasn't everything, but what she meant was, if the money doesn't help her, it doesn't matter. When I bought the 4-bedroom colonial, with its long driveway and quiet backyard, I realized it was the first home I'd ever chosen without compromise. I hung my own art on the walls. I cooked meals in a kitchen that was finally mine. I woke up without anxiety chewing at my ribs. And then the messages started. Not from Rebecca. Her pride wouldn't let her reach out first. They came from her friends. "Hey, we heard you took a new position. Is everything okay?" I ignored them. Then from her mom, "Rebecca says you left for a small job in a dying town. That doesn't sound like you." I replied with only the truth. She refused to consider my opportunity, so I respected her decision by moving forward alone. A day later, her mom wrote back, "She told us it was a lateral move." I'm surprised. I didn't correct anything. It wasn't my job to fix Rebecca's version of the story. For months, Rebecca stayed silent, and I didn't think about her. Not really. Not until my LinkedIn post went viral. The picture from our division's product launch. Suddenly, the internet knew who I was, what I did, how much responsibility I carried, and that's when Rebecca's emails began. Not one, not two, dozens, all shapes and sizes. "Is this real? Division head? When were you going to tell me? I didn't know it was like this. Your house. It's beautiful. I made a mistake. Please talk to me." I didn't respond. Not because I hated her, because I'd already grieved the version of her I thought existed. Then her friends started reaching out with confessions disguised as apologies. She didn't tell us the full story. We didn't know the position was that big. We might have been too harsh. And then, surprisingly, unbelievably, a message from her dad. "You made the right call, son. Don't look back." That one hit harder than anything Rebecca ever said. But nothing prepared me for the day she showed up in Millbrook. She walked into my Saturday coffee shop, looking smaller than I remembered, wearing clothes that didn't scream designer, hair tied back like she was trying to blend in. "Hi, Brian," she said softly. "Rebecca. How did you find me?" "Your neighbor," she said. "I had to talk to you." I felt something unfamiliar then. Not anger, not longing, just distance. She looked around the cafe, taking in the small-town charm she once mocked. Then she looked at me with the kind of desperation people feel when they realize the door they slammed shut won't open again. "I love you," she whispered. I made a mistake. I didn't respond. She kept going. "I researched Millbrook. I could work here. There's demand for interior design. I can start over." "But you didn't want to before," I said. That was different. I didn't know. "Because you didn't ask." She blinked hard, like that truth physically hurt. "I know that now," she whispered. "Brian, please. We could have an amazing life here." "I already do," I said. "You were supposed to build it with me," she choked out. "But you wouldn't even look at it," I replied. "You wanted the life you imagined, not the life we could create." She opened her mouth, but I raised my hand gently. "Rebecca, I hope you find what you're looking for. Truly. But it's not here. And it's not me." And when she walked out of that cafe, I felt nothing but clarity. A clean final closing of a chapter that had been dragging long after it should have ended. Later came her legal threats, her social media accusations, her failed attempts to paint me as the villain. But the truth was stronger. Her own friends exposed her lies. Her parents apologized. Her life stayed stuck exactly where it had been while mine expanded in every direction. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the title. It was the freedom of choosing myself when she refused to choose us. It's been a year now. And every day I wake up in the life she could have shared and I think, if someone won't walk with you into your future, don't let them stop you at the door. Rebecca didn't lose me because I moved. She lost me because she never even tried to see where I was going. Meanwhile, Millbrook, the boring town she mocked, ended up giving me everything I ever wanted, and more.